9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon, Space Fam, and welcome to Starbase. I'm Jesse Anderson, a Senior Production Engineering Manager at SpaceX.
And I'm Dan Hewitt with SpaceX Communications. Awesome to have you with us here in Texas, Jesse. Welcome to Starbase. First time, right?
Thank you so much, Dan. Yeah, my first time here, and it is mind-blowing. I went out to the pad this morning, and the scale of the vehicle is just insane.
Dwarfs everything.
And for those of you watching at home, in case you missed the news, Starbase is no longer just a cool name. It is now officially an incorporated city in Texas, and we'll have more on that a little bit later today.
Yeah, right now, though, we are counting down to Starship's 9th flight test, currently targeting the very start of our window at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Good news right up front, not tracking any issues with the vehicle. Weather is gorgeous out there right now. Rain this morning, little bit of wind, nothing now, nothing to worry about. Looking good for a launch.
Starship development is moving quickly here at Starbase. So fast, in fact, that we already are reflying the Super Heavy booster today, which last flew on Flight 7. The primary objectives for today are very similar to our last two attempts, except for the booster, which, in addition to flying for the second time, has an exciting return journey planned for its return back to Earth.
That's right. It's going to be getting some serious rigor, and pretty important, we are not going to be attempting to catch the booster today. We're going to use this launch to kind of further accelerate the development. We're putting Super Heavy kind of through the ringer, some serious rigor. We're going to go through all of that in just a couple of minutes. We're also hoping to get Ship into space, and it's got a couple of objectives like deploying simulated Starlink satellites and then a range of experiments during its reentry. We're really trying to test the limits, the capabilities of that heat shield, the flaps, the structure, everything about it. Primary payload on this flight, once again, as always, is data.
It's definitely a very big day for both stages. There's always a chance we don't reach every objective that we set for ourselves, but success comes from what we learn on days like today. And of course, whatever happens, excitement is guaranteed.
Yeah, that's right. Progress is not measured by single flight tests. It's whatever that timeline overall is, and getting us closer to establishing self-sustaining civilization on Mars, making life multiplanetary. Every time we're learning something from these flights that will get us there, that is progress.
Exactly. Starship is the first orbital launch vehicle engineered to be fully reusable and built for frequent flight and heavy payloads, just like today's commercial airliners.
It's the product of years of rapid development, testing, iteration. We're trying to fly as frequently as possible, fix problems as they appear, and then fly again. It all started here at Starbase back with Starhopper. It was a small single Raptor prototype. Kind of looked like a water tower. We turned it into a water tower eventually. It made its first low-altitude hop back in 2019 here at Starbase. You could tell the pad, that's the pad that we were just looking at. It looks dramatically different now, two towers. But Starhopper delivered. It was able to prove that we could use that Raptor engine for controlled takeoff and landing.
And that is so wild to see that there on your screen was just 6 years ago, and now we're here today with a full-size vehicle. So from there, we moved to full-size test articles with increasingly complex test flights that reached progressively higher altitudes. And each test shaped the Starship that we see today on the pad, a stronger, taller, and more refined vehicle.
That's right. All right. Now, let's go out there and meet it. Starship is made up of two parts. First, on the bottom, the Super Heavy booster, powered by 33 Raptor engines. Both Super Heavy and Ship are running on liquid methane and liquid oxygen. That second stage, the Starship upper stage, is powered by 6 of those Raptor engines. 3 of them are optimized to sea level performance, 3 for vacuum, so operating while they're in space. And here's a quick look under the hood at all of those Raptors. On the left, that's a view from underneath the launch mount. That's 33 Raptor engines on the first stage, on the booster. And on the right, that's a view inside of the ship. So you're looking down at the top of the booster at 6 Raptor engines inside the ship. Those are what's going to power it to orbit. Now, that second stage is also what will one day carry cargo, payloads, people, everything that's going to space. It's also going to be responsible for in-space propellant transfer. That's where we're going to take 2 starships, meet them up in orbit. One will be able to transfer propellant to the other. That's a really critical capability for Starship to do all of these missions beyond low Earth orbit. That also unlocks our ability to send huge amounts of cargo, tremendous amounts of people to destinations far beyond Earth.
Yeah, the Super Heavy booster is designed to launch, separate, flip, and return to the launch site where it can be caught by the chopsticks on the launch tower. Though, as we mentioned earlier, we are not attempting a booster catch today on Flight 9. Starship re-enters the Earth's atmosphere at the conclusion of its mission, steering itself to a vertical landing or catch. And both stages are designed to return to Earth and fly again, making this the first rocket in history that will be fully reusable.
And then just in between the two vehicles is what's known as the hot stage ring. That's a steel structure that really takes the brunt of those ship engines as they ignite, protecting the booster while the ship's still attached to it. That enables us to do hot staging. It's faster, more efficient, kind of shutting everything down and then reigniting. Right now, that hot stage it's single use. It detaches from the booster as it flies back. But in the future, it's going to be integrated right into the top. And then on top of all of that, there's all of the infrastructure that's built up around it to support Starship. We call it Stage 0. That's everything, the launch pads, the propellant farm, launch towers, chopsticks that are catching the booster out of the air, stacking the ship, all of that. And you may have noticed we have a new addition out there near the pad. The orbital launch mount for Pad 2 has officially been installed. That's starting to come together. Just like Pad 1, Pad 2 has a launch mount. That's where you're going to put Super Heavy on top. We also have a launch tower with arms, a little bit shorter on that one. That's going to be used to stack the Starship on top, put the booster on top, catch the booster, catch the Starship. We did put the orbital launch mount on there. That's responsible for routing all of the propellant to the booster ahead of flight. Underneath it, you've got flame deflectors, the water deluge system to disperse all of those forces. The single piece we just lifted in weighs about 1,060 metric tons, which, if you're keeping score at home, that's the same weight as about 10 Millennium Falcons. It's heavy.
That's a lot of Millennium Falcons,
So
Dan.
many.
We're also currently in work on Starship's brand new pad at Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39A, and we're hoping to bring that online later this year as well. Tons of progress with Starship so far in 2025, and lots of incredible milestones still coming up. And we are still on track to lift off tonight at 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And right now, it's time to say hi to Chris, who's over there repping the West Coast Ops today. How's it going, Chris?
Hey, Jesse and Dan, and welcome everyone to West Coast and Hawthorne, California. As you can see behind me, the crowd is gathering outside of our mission control room here in Hawthorne, and the excitement is really palpable as we continue to count down toward Starship's 9th flight test. Now, our mission control room here in Hawthorne usually serves as the mission control room for our Falcon and Dragon missions once they launch from Florida and California. Now, with Starship, all countdown and mission control operations actually use the same flight control team from the same location at Starbase, which you can see on your screen now. But as we develop a vehicle like Starship, we want as many experts watching over its various systems as we can. And that's what we use the mission control room here in Hawthorne for during Starship flight tests like today's. The folks in mission control, which you see now on your screen, are the responsible engineers for Starship's various systems. This includes things like booster systems, stage propellant, our ground stations, flight software, the loads, and the vehicle structures as well. And having this support gives the flight teams in Starbase immediate access to our engineers' knowledge, which is really, really important when we're making informed decisions very quickly in a test program like this. This setup has been great for Starship flight tests so far, as we've handled things like propellant temperature differences, as well as day of launch winds that can affect the loads placed on Starship structures during launch, and particularly during the descent of the Super Heavy booster back to Earth. So having all of these responsible engineers ready to support is crucial during Starship testing, where we place hardware in flight conditions quickly to iterate and make the best and most reliable rocket that we can. So it's definitely a full house, a growing full house here in Hawthorne for our 9th flight of Starship today. Every flight brings us a step closer to a future where Starship is flying multiple times a day, and I'm sure you all feel the same way down there in Texas, Dan and Jesse, but I can't wait to see Starship's launch today. How about you?
Yeah, can't wait to see it, Chris. As you can see, props loading on the vehicle is just a little under 2 miles away from us, and we're really excited. Looking back real quick, so back in March, Starship's 8th flight test saw us catch the Super Heavy booster for the 3rd time ever, another big step on that path to full and rapid reusability. Unfortunately, the Starship upper stage did experience what we call a rapid, unscheduled disassembly before it finished its climb to space, which meant we didn't reach all of those additional mission objectives that we had set.
About 5.5 minutes into ship's ascent burn, a hardware failure in one of its sea-level Raptor engines took out that engine, the 2 remaining sea-level engines, and a Raptor vacuum engine. That's 4 of the 6 engines that ship has. This was a different failure than we saw on Flight 7, and the fixes that we put in place did work as expected. So this was a new issue on Flight 8. So welcome to iterative engineering.
That's right. Losing hardware is a potential outcome of any test program. That's why we're always prepared with safety measures in place and also ready to have boots on the ground to assist with anything like debris cleanup. We can coordinate with all the necessary parties, organizations, administrations for safety in advance and in an ongoing basis during our test campaigns to plan for as many possible outcomes. Definitely do want to say thank you, though, to the people of the Bahamas, the government of the Bahamas, who worked with us so closely since Flight 8.
We took full responsibility for the cleanup, and in doing so, we had people on the ground in the Bahamas within 12 hours to help with debris recovery. So all that said, we're moving forward in our development cycle with safety at the top of mind, and we fly again today to get this current iteration of ship to space and back.
That's right. Putting hardware in a flight environment as frequently as possible so you're seeing how things behave all together in the real world. Then you're solving problems as they pop up. That's how SpaceX developed their very first rocket, Falcon 1. Same philosophy was used to develop Falcon 9.
Today, we're looking to get our first re-entry with the latest iteration of ship while intentionally stressing the Super Heavy vehicle during its return to get data on its boundaries. And by stressing, we mean that we'll be pushing the flight envelope of Super Heavy as we fly at a higher angle of attack during descent towards the Gulf. Angle of attack in this case means that Super Heavy is pitched up to maximize drag and slow return. Because of this test, we will not be attempting to catch and recover Super Heavy, which again is flying for its 2nd time today. So for a brief moment, this booster will hold the title as the Super Heavy flight leader.
That's right. All right. Lot still ahead for today. Let's get into it real quick with this overview. As always, everything starts with a liftoff. 33 Raptor engines igniting. Super Heavy pushing itself and Starship into ascent over the Gulf. It's going to continue for about 2.5 minutes before we get to hot staging. Ship will ignite in its engines. Booster will do its boost back burn and begin its flight experiments back for a hard splashdown in the Gulf of America. Meanwhile, ship continues its burn into space.
And ship will remain suborbital. We will be deploying 8 Starlink simulator satellites and then head towards re-entry. We'll relight a Raptor engine as well as test experiments during re-entry, such as missing tiles, metallic tiles, loading the vehicle's flaps, and then ship will attempt a flip maneuver. And if all goes planned, we'll conclude the test with a soft water splashdown in the Indian Ocean. So that's what we have on the menu for Flight 9 today.
Whole lot.
Flight 8's Rudd taught us new lessons about Starship hardware, specifically the Raptor engines. And as we touched on earlier, the root cause was traced to a hardware failure in one of Starship's 3 center Raptor engines.
Yeah, just since that flight, we've done more than 100 long-duration Raptor tests at our facility in McGregor. Huge shout out to that team for really putting in the work to better understand what happened. As a result, the engines that are on Starship's upper stage on the pad right behind us have a few changes. One of the key ones we did was additional preload on some of the joints, essentially some additional torquing, a new nitrogen purge system for the engines themselves, and made some improvements to the propellant drain system.
After our first ever Super Heavy refurb campaign, we static fired with all 33 Raptor engines. This was a chance to see all the hardware operating together, and for this flight, our teams had an opportunity to make adjustments or hardware replacements for this first ever reflight of the Super Heavy booster.
And then it was ship's turn. We took it through several static fires. First, we did this short duration single engine burn to simulate an in-space reignition of Raptor using those header tanks, those smaller tanks up in the nose cone. We also completed a longer duration 60-second burn with all 6 engines. So where you're really putting the entire propulsion system that's going to be used for the ship's ascent into space through the paces, making sure everything's working together before we go stack it on the pad.
And in the end, these changes represent the
we straight up. So again, as you're separating from the ship, we want to
after flight, we land and use.
Thank you to our Starlink teams for making everything with the From 2 crew shared possible. This honestly made me feel like I was right there with them in Dragon. They were living, they were working, they were relaxing, they were doing their experiments while also having fun. Basically, just being people and inviting us along for the ride. And that was really meaningful. Being invited up there really showed how these are just the early days on the road to making life multiplanetary. And the vehicle that's going to make all of that happen is Starship. And Dan and Jesse, I don't know about you, but that is definitely a future I have wanted since I was a little kid, and I cannot wait to see us make it a reality.
Yeah, right there with you, Chris. It's the fact that we're getting close to that being reality, that the vehicle that's going to go is sitting on the pad right there. Like, that's endlessly exciting. All of that's going to include sending humans, all of the infrastructure for a permanent presence on Mars. And we're looking ahead to sending the very first Starships to Mars as early as next year.
Yeah, this will help prove that we can actually get to Mars with a focus on learning as much as possible while demonstrating what will be needed for Mars transit and landing. But before we can make life multiplanetary, we have to build the Starships that will make this all possible.
That's right. And that's happening right here, Starbase, Texas, the gateway to Mars. This is where we're soon going to be launching up to 25 Starship launches per year from here at Starbase. And the place is changing every single day. We've grown quite a bit just in the last couple of years. There's a couple hundred employees, their families living amongst actual rockets. We're in the process of expanding production and integration. We've got a target of 1,000 Starships a year we're going to try to hit. And recently, we did become a city of our own. We're the first city in Cameron County in 30 years. And that's just going to help us scale more quickly, try to build out the best community possible for all the people that are building the future of humanity's place in space. Starbase, pretty easily one of the most inspiring, exciting, unique places to live and work on the planet. As usual, shameless plug, we're always hiring. Come help us build the gateway to Mars. Visit SpaceX.com/careers. You can see all of our openings.
And this is my first time in Starbase. And Dan, the Star Factory is a manufacturing engineer's dream. To be able to build a factory like this at such a large scale with such a large scale vehicle is so wild to me. And though I'm just visiting, Chris is hanging out right where I call home base. So let's check back in with Chris in Hawthorne.
Thanks, Jesse. Yeah, everything here in Hawthorne is looking good. The crowd is gathered, really excited to watch the hard work of all of their colleagues come to fruition here for Starship on its 9th flight test. Not tracking any issues. We are excited to watch Starship do its thing today, make it halfway around the world, and test a lot of those critical in-space maneuvers and operations that will be vital for the program's continued operation. So Dan and Jesse, we can't wait for liftoff. Let's have a good flight today.
Thanks, Chris. Now, if you're just now joining us, where have you been? But we're glad that you're joining us now. We are at T-minus just under 6 minutes until liftoff of the 9th Starship test flight. So far, the range is looking good. All the airspace and trajectory area that we are going to be launching through is looking good for our test flight today. Weather has been great. It was a little rainy and windy this morning, but it cleared up. It looks beautiful here in Starbase, and propellant loading continues on both stages.
All right, yeah, it is continuing. We're a little over 90% full on our booster. We are pretty much full in the main tanks on ship, filling up those header tanks. We're going to continue loading prop for about 2 more minutes. Once we're done with that, you've got just under 11 million pounds of liquid propellant spread across those 2 stages. After we get through all of that prop load, our stage 0 will get ready. The ground systems will go through pushbacks, clearing all of those fluid feed lines back to the propellant farm, getting ready for launch. We did just see they did a flap wiggle check, so the final flap check on the ship. We're doing final alignments of the guidance, navigation, and control system, our thrust vector control, essentially our steering, checkouts of the flight safety system. So everything progressing right now. If we do need to hold, that can come at T-minus 40 seconds. That's a point built into the countdown where we can pause to wait for any final checkouts, pressurizations, anything that we need to complete. We can hold there. We will only hold there if we're tracking an issue. We're not currently tracking anything that will hold us at T-minus 40 seconds. But if you've seen a Starship launch before, they can happen. We can push through them and then launch that day still.
Exactly. But when we do pass through T-minus 40 seconds, a number of events will occur in rapid succession. The ground spin and ignition systems come up to flight pressure, ship goes to internal power, and then after that, the quick disconnect or QD, arm lockout is removed in preparation for retraction just shortly after T-minus 0. And once we pass T-minus 40 seconds, we do still have the ability to recycle the count under certain conditions back to T-minus 40 seconds, and then hold there to assess what happened and see if we can proceed again back down to T0.
Yeah. There are a couple of things, kind of gates in that timeline that if we pass through that and we hit a hold, we'd have to scrub for the day. One pretty visual one will be if the water starts flowing for that deflector system that's underneath the launch mount. That happens right at around T-minus 10 seconds. For flowing water, we can't turn it off after it starts, and if we hit a hold, we're scrubbed for the day. We would need to refill those water tanks. We would also, at that point, need to refill all of the propellant tanks, as 11 million pounds of propellant is a whole lot. We can typically do that in about 24 hours, so we can always turn around to try again tomorrow. But we are coming up on 3 minutes away from liftoff. We should be hearing that we're closed out of prop load on the ship at this point. Booster coming up shortly.
And wow, the weather just looks amazing there with Starship on the launch pad. Just about 2 minutes and 45 seconds from T0 with a lot of objectives for today. The booster, the Super Heavy booster flying today, will be flying for its 2nd time. Last flight was on Flight 7 and just turned around in 2 flights, which is pretty incredible. I'm super excited to see that booster fly again.
All right, we did just hear we are going to hold at T-minus 40 seconds. So we'll pass along some more information once we hear that reason. But again, that's not the end of the day. We can hold at T-minus 40 seconds for quite a few minutes. We eventually have to start looking at our temperature of all of our propellant on board. That's usually what drives us to, if we've held too long, we have to stand down for the day. So we are expecting a hold at T-minus 40 seconds. Sounds like we're going to be doing some additional checkouts on the booster Raptor while we're at that T-minus 40 second mark. So we will expect to see the clock pause at T-minus 40. And then again, we've got a couple of minutes. They can work through the issues. If we're able to clear them, we can still launch today. If it's something that we can't, we can always stand down, turn around, recycle, fly again tomorrow.
Again, that's really important. This is what terminal count is exactly for, is to be checking the vehicle, monitoring the vehicle systems as it makes its way down to T0. And again, this gives us the ability to catch anything and be able to hold, as Dan has been saying, and recycle if we need to, or pause so that we can work through those issues and see if it's something that we need to stand down for. And as Dan mentioned, we will be holding at T-minus 40 seconds, so in about 20 seconds from now.
Yeah, so we'll hold there, and they'll work through these final checkouts on, sounds like just one of those Raptors on the first stage on Super Heavy, which, as you said, we're reflying it for the first time. 29 of those 33 engines have already been used in a launch, one of which has already launched
Twice, and we'll go for
and
its
is getting ready for its third
time.
All right. And you just heard our flight director for the day, Joe Sliker. He just shared that we are going to hold at this T-minus 40 second mark. Keep an eye on one of those Raptor engines on booster. And if you're just now jumping in, we are holding still at T-minus 40 seconds. Watching one engine, waiting for temperatures to kind of get to a zone that we want them to on one of the engines on the booster, on the Super Heavy booster, getting ready for its second ever flight. So we'll just continue to hold. Again, we can hang out here for several minutes. We held for a while on the first attempt last time and then cleared it, and then we triggered a different issue on the ground side.
But again, this is exactly what it's for. This gives us the best chances at success.
And the clock is rolling.
There we go.
All right. T-minus 30. Let's listen in. Watch that first flight proven Super Heavy. Get ready to take off from Starbase.
T-minus 1, hit hold.
We did have a hold, and looks like the clock jumped back to T-minus 40 seconds.
All right, so yep, we jumped out. I did not see the deflector go off. So hopefully we were right at around that T-minus 10 second mark.
And if we were before that T-minus 10 second mark, we do have the ability to recycle, as we mentioned earlier, back to T-minus 40 seconds.
So it looked like this time it was a ground side issue. We're taking a look at this real quick. So again, we're back at T-minus 40. We're gonna hold for a little bit. We are still not scrubbed for the day. Give them a couple of minutes to work through this. Again, we can hang out at T-minus 40 for several minutes. Eventually, we start looking at your bulk temperatures and all of your propellant on board the vehicle. We're not actively replenishing the propellant on board Super Heavy and Starship, and so you don't have essentially forever to hang out before things start to warm up. And you do want to make sure your temperature's in a really stable range for a healthy startup on Raptor engines. So they're going to work through this issue. We can continue to hold here for a couple of minutes. What's launch without a little extra added excitement? All right, so cumulatively, we've held for a little over 3 minutes between the two holds. Again, this is a ground side issue on our tower. The techs are looking through the data right now to see if it's something that we can either work through or if it would cause us to have to stand down. So we're continuing to hang out with them, holding at T-minus 40.
If you're just joining us, we did initially hold at T-minus 40 seconds. We continued the count, but recycled before we got to T-minus 10 seconds. And so we're back at a hold at T-minus 40 seconds. Waiting for more information. The team is checking out to see if we can continue today. And we're continuing to hold here at T-minus 40 seconds. We've been holding for just about 5 minutes now as the teams evaluate if we can continue to T0 for Flight 9.
All right, so it sounds like we're coming to a resolution. All right, so we are getting to a resolution. We're going to reset everything. All right, so we're going to see the clock. It is now rolling.
Here we go.
We essentially
bearings are pressurizing for Stromberg retract. Stromberg retract sequence has started. Stage 1 lock float is complete. Stage 2 lock float is complete. Gas launch closeout. Falcon 9 is in startup. Launch director, go for launch. T minus 30 seconds. T minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. And liftoff of Falcon 9. Go SpaceX, go Starlink.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Falcon 9 power and telemetry are nominal.
Max Q. MVAC chill. Main engine cut off.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Stage 1 entry burn, startup.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn, shutdown. Stage 1 transonic.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Nominal orbit insertion.